In this video today, Pete Hegseth isn't backing down. He's taking the fight to the media.
So you're in this all the way.
Why would I back down? I've always been a fighter.
Also, Trump's message to Hamas goes viral.
I want to thank President Trump for his strong statement yesterday.
And while Trump is showing strength, the current president is showing weakness.
As an integral part of a broader strategy to
So question for you, what would you say is one of the most important attributes of a Secretary of Defense for our country? Now, I'm going to say the resiliency to fight back against the media's hit pieces, and that's exactly what Pete Hegseth did this morning. Watch.
Have you had any conversations with the president-elect about replacing you with Governor DeSantis?
I spoke to the president-elect this morning. He said, keep going, keep fighting. Behind you all the way.
So you're in this all the way.
Why would I back down? I've always been a fighter. I'm here for the more fighters. It's personal passion for me.
So you're not withdrawing your name from consideration, just to be clear.
I'm meeting all day with senators.
So the one thing that I see in his response so far is this: his willingness to fight back against these anonymous accusations or allegations demonstrates the fortitude that we would expect from our Secretary of Defense. So hats off to Pete for coming out and speaking out and standing up for himself. And here is Pete actually speaking to the press and explaining exactly what the discussions have been about as he's been on Capitol Hill. Let's hear it.
Wonderful process to go through and meet with senators and talk to them, especially members of the Senate Armed Services Committee, whose passion is the Defense Department, and our warfighters, to hear what they want to do to make sure that department is properly oriented for the threats of the world and make sure that we're putting the warfighters first. That's what Donald Trump asked me to do. Your job is to bring a warfighting ethos back to the Pentagon. Your job is to make sure that it's lethality, lethality, lethality. Everything else is gone. Everything else that distracts from that shouldn't be happening. That's the message I'm hearing from senators in that advise and consent process. It's been a wonderful process.
Now, of course, Pete Hegseth is not the only person obviously being attacked here. His mother has been the subject of those attacks as well. Their emails between each other has been leaked, and she's received threats from the New York Times. So she is even coming out this morning and fighting back as well and standing up for her son, Pete Hegseth. Let's hear that.
What's your message to the New York Times?
I would say I don't think the way you operate it feels almost criminal when reporters call you and threaten you. I don't think a lot of people know that's the way they operate. And they are in it for the commission, for the money, and they don't care who they hurt, families, children. And I don't believe that is the right way to do things.
Do you think that's just the way they try to get the story?
Oh, of course. It's their job. But I can take the opposite view. I can take the high road. I can take the belief in good and the good in people. And will we be persecuted? Will we suffer in life? Yeah, sure, we will. But I know in whom I believe. I believe in God. I believe in Pete. I believe in my family, my husband of 48 years. Hi, honey.
So some of you guys, maybe you've been following some of these attacks from the media, and that's really what they are, hit pieces towards Pete Hegseth. And the only question that really matters, and maybe you can answer this in the comment section right now as I ask it, why do you believe they are so scared of Pete Hegseth? Why are they so obsessed with him at this point? Let me know what your thoughts are in the comment section below. Okay, so thank you so much for watching the video so far. And if you're getting value from this, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. If you do want to support us further, go to the link in the description below, shop the merch store, or buy us a cup of coffee. Now, an example of how obsessed they are, hear this next hit piece that CNN is running on Pete. Check this out.
He really argued that Donald Trump was not hawkish enough on the military. Listen to him here.
You wouldn't want a top-tier presidential candidate getting all of their military advice from watching Meet the Press. There's a lot more nuance. There's a lot more detail. Foreign policy and national security is not about TV shows. They're going to have to walk back a little bit from this idea that he gets it from the political shows.
And look, that's not the only criticism we found. Some of them were deeply personal on Donald Trump. He even attacked him as a, quote, armchair tough guy. That was his quote. And then attacked him for getting deferments from the Vietnam War. Listen to him here.
It's typical Trump. All bluster, very little substance. He talks a tough game, but then when pressed on it, he's an armchair tough guy. I hate to say it, but this is a guy who said that John McCain is not a war hero, yet he sought his own 5 military deferments.
So it's going to be interesting to see here, Aaron, how Donald Trump squares both, those comments from 2016 versus what he's saying today.
Now, we've heard this same song and dance when Trump obviously picked J.D. Vance to be his vice presidential nominee, right? And then what did they do? They tried to dig up old tapes showing that J.D. Vance was criticizing Trump, and they're using the same playbook with Pete Hegseth, and all they're really trying to do, guys, and we know, is just smear his name. And again, I have it written down right here. This isn't journalism, folks. It is a coordinated attempt to weaken a strong conservative voice, someone who truly can create change, someone who is going to stand firm in their beliefs. And they don't like that, which is why you're hearing more petty criticisms and emotional triggers from CNN when it comes to Pete Hegseth. Here's Van Jones showing us just that.
There's a very damaging article in the New Yorker, very well researched, about allegations made at 2 veterans organizations, nonprofits. Very small. One of them was a very small organization that he essentially, according to reporting, was essentially forced out of.
Right, exactly.
So financial mismanagement.
Right. So he's not a great public face at this point, and he can't run anything but his mouth. And the small things he had to run, he ran badly. So you start wondering, why is this guy in charge?
Yeah, so you're seeing the example of how dirty politics is. This is why usually good people, you're not going to find them in politics, because, and it takes a special type of person to put themselves in that type of spotlight. So I definitely commend all of these individuals on both sides for putting their names out there. But I digress. Yeah, Van Jones, he's really pathetic. It's one thing to critique whether or not someone is qualified for a position. But once you start going down the road of character assassination attempts, then at that point you lost me. And that's why nobody listens to CNN anymore, because these people have lost not only their credibility, but they've lost all decency. They don't want to actually report just strictly on the merits. They want to go into the personal stuff about an individual. Now, on that point about whether or not someone is qualified, here's Senator Langford thinking the way that I do. Why don't we just get to what really matters? Is let's do the confirmation hearing and let's find out, is he qualified and is he ready to actually assume this position?
But what's interesting is the national media, the CNN, the MSNBC, all those CBS, all those folks all talk about people as if they've met them. Mm-hmm. All of us get the privilege of actually getting a chance to be able to meet them and to be able to walk through that. So there's all the noise that's out there. Then there's actually what's happening on the Hill as people are one by one getting a chance to be able to meet with folks, as I'm doing later on today with several different nominees. So let's let everybody walk through the process on this and actually do the constitutional responsibility. President Trump, like every other president, has the right to be able to hire his staff and to be able to pick the people around him. I have that right to be able to hire the people around him. But the Senate also has a role in key people in what's called advice and consent. Very often, everybody is put in place on that, but there'll be a couple of folks that'll go through the process that there'll be a few senators that'll say no to. At this point, let it play out. Let's get past the media noise and let's actually do the constitutional process, and let's actually support the president and who he's actually trying to be able to pick to put next to him to be able to actually turn the country around. Yeah. Now, if you listen to what he said in the beginning, these legacy media channels, CNN, MSNBC, ABC, all these individuals, they act as if they know these people personally, like they've been in the room with them, like they grew up with them, because that's how they write the articles and that's how they report what they call to be news and journalism, which we know it isn't. At this point, it's just entertainment and opinions. Yeah, they don't know Pete Hegseth like that. They only know what the anonymous sources are saying, of course. Now, Langford pointed to some common sense responses to all of this. Let's actually just get to the process of all of this and get away from the noise. Now, one of the things that actually irks me about this entire story is how these liberals and these individuals, these pundits, these commentators, they come off as if they've served in the military and they know better. Here is MSNBC running their programs and reporting the news as if all the stories that have come out about Pete are factually true. Listen to the language they're starting to use. Check this out.
Listen, I'm not going to stand in judgment of him as a human being. I've never met him. Lots of people have alcohol problems, have messy divorces. Fine. The problem is that American voters who voted for Donald Trump, many of them voted for an anti-establishment figure. They weren't necessarily rubber stamping, this kind of character flaw in the White House and in the administration. So this isn't something that is easy to justify. I mean, I think this isn't a policy issue. This is a character one. And the more runway that Pete Hegseth has, the worse it looks.
Can I just stop this really quick? And I'm going to tell you guys what it is. And some of you guys may not like this, but I have to be honest. Do you really believe the people who are running the government are all saints? I mean, do you guys honestly believe that none of them have any issues in the background? Everyone has issues. I mean, you can't be in that position unless you got something wrong with you in some way, shape, or form in your life somewhere, right? I mean, can we just stop being naive here as Americans? We keep thinking that our leaders must be these role models. They're not role models. Okay, we got to stop that. Now, your parent should be a role model. Maybe your uncle could be a role model. Your mentor should be a role model. But the President of the United States, the Secretary of Defense, the Director of National Intelligence, I will never have an expectation for any of them to be a role model. Let's get real here, folks. So when they're going on and claiming that this isn't what Americans voted for, no, we're voting for results.
We also know, though, a lot of men and women come back from war zones, and perhaps they have PTSD. I'm not suggesting that's the case here. I don't know what the case is here, but it is very obvious by seeing the pattern of behavior since he returned from the combat that he needs help. I mean, if you even just read what his mother wrote, and I know that now she's trying to be a good mom and trying to defend her son after that's out.
Okay, let's use Joe Scoborough's thinking. So, according to the patterns of MSNBC and the Morning Joe show, you guys need to shut down immediately. You guys are the one that actually needs help. Pete Hegseth does not need help. Last time I checked, he's doing pretty good, right? I mean, he's got his own weekend show on Fox that obviously he had to stop doing because he's been nominated to be the Secretary of Defense. He's got amazing family, a wife, kids. He served in the military. I think he's doing really good. You guys, on the other hand, you guys have been struggling bad. And every single week they keep saying that you guys are getting worse numbers when it comes to your ratings. So I think you guys should probably focus on the content and your production of your show instead of trying to personally attack individuals. And the more respectable thing for these individuals to do in the media is just to talk about the actual real issues. Is he qualified? Some of these legitimate questions that have come up, can you answer them, please? And he can only answer them when he goes to the confirmation hearing. So why spend all that energy on it right now? Now, David Urban, who also is a conservative on CNN, points out probably the simplest explanation on why Pete Hegseth is qualified.
If he does get FBI background check and vetted, there's no pass or fail. They just present they bring a big file up and give it to each senator to read, and they take it with you when they leave. I think that's important, and I think it's important for Pete to get a hearing to be able to stand on his own 2 feet and answer those questions. To Vance's point, we had the current Secretary of Defense was missing. He wasn't at work for 7 days, and the entire Department of Defense didn't even know it. The president didn't know it. The current Secretary of Defense oversaw one of the most regrettable military withdrawals from Afghanistan, from any country, but from Afghanistan. And so, I don't know that what people say. What are his requirements? He's got the faith of the president. He's got the ear of the president. He's got the confidence of the president. I think that's a lot.
To me, if I answer the question, is Pete Hegseth qualified? It's very simple for me. I mean, what are the requirements for him to be the Secretary of Defense during this Trump administration, during this time in our country? Well, step number 1, he needs to be anti-establishment. Is that Pete Hegseth? Yes, he is. Okay. Number 2, he needs to be a veteran. He had to have served in the military, and preferably he has combat experience. Is that Pete Hegseth? Oh, perfect. It is. All right, great. Number 3, he's willing to follow the orders and be loyal to the President of the United States, and he's not going to stab the President and the United States in the back like a General Miley did, right? So is that Pete Hegseth? Oh, yeah, it is. Perfect. So if I just stop there, he's pretty much good to go at this point. At the end of the day, President-elect Trump spoke with Pete Hegseth this morning, and clearly they're going to keep pushing forward and fighting against the media lies. Now, while Pete is engaged in doing that and defending himself, Trump is clearly taking a bold stand on the world stage and putting the world on notice, particularly Hamas. Check this out. So here he is on Truth Social. Everybody is talking about the hostages who are being held so violently, inhumanely, and against the will of the entire world in the Middle East. But it's all talk and no action. Please let this truth serve to represent that if the hostages are not released prior to January 20th, 2025, the date that I proudly assume office as president of the United States, there will be all hell to pay in the Middle East. And for those in charge who perpetrated these atrocities against humanity, those responsible will be hit harder than anybody has been hit in the long and storied history of the United States of America. Release the hostages now. Now, clearly, this got the attention of quite a few people, including the Trump deranged media. And here is NBC, and here is deranged Reed melting down over this post. Check this out.
We are seeing a global trend of the far right surging. It isn't just happening here. But let's bring you back to the U.S. and to our local gangster, Donald Trump. He's not even president yet, and he's already spending his time sitting in his golden palace, Mar-a-Lago, muscling other countries like he's Tony Soprano with a social media site. Doing things like, reportedly, debating whether or not to invade Mexico, threatening BRICS countries, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, with 100% tariffs if they don't commit to trading in dollars and not their own currencies. Demanding Hamas release all hostages being held in Gaza before his inauguration, or there will be, quote, all hell to pay in the Middle East.
Okay, so let's pause for a moment here. I want you guys to read the titles that she's criticizing. Team Trump debates how much should we invade Mexico. Okay, we need a president who's going to be tough on Mexico. Can we all agree to that, right? The second headline, CNN, Trump threatens 100% tariff on BRICS countries if they pursue creating new currency. That sounds about right. Why would we encourage countries to not use our US dollar? We want people using our currency, right? Okay. Other than the last one here, which is what the story is about. Currently, Trump warns of hell to pay if Hamas doesn't release hostages. Yeah, again, we need a president who's going to stand up and clearly be confident and have the fortitude to threaten our adversaries, right? And put them on notice. Sometimes that's exactly what is needed. Strength, by the way. And the prime minister of Israel responded. Let's hear that.
I want to thank President Trump for his strong statement yesterday about the need for Hamas to release the hostages, the responsibility of Hamas. And this adds another force to our continuing effort to release all the hostages. Thank you, President Trump.
Now, every time Trump puts out a post that goes viral, it gets a reaction. It gets a response. When he threatened Canada and Mexico with tariffs, they responded immediately, not just through some, anonymous spokesperson for their office. No, the actual individual came out and had to respond, right? And so that just shows you the difference between Joe Biden and Donald Trump, right? Donald Trump is a type of individual who demands attention and gets it. Now, there's only two sides to this entire story. One is from the ultra progressive liberal who's unhinged and claims that these threats are not good, they don't work, and it's only going to make things worse. That's really, I'm just summing up their complaints about Trump. Then the other side is using common sense where they say, well, wait a minute. Sometimes just issuing these threats are more than enough to get the job done. But here's Scott Jennings saying exactly what I just said. Watch.
You do have to ask the question whether that is the strategy here, that he's putting his foot down and saying there's going to be hell to pay, and maybe that might get results without him actually having to do anything.
Yeah, thank God we have a president-elect who's willing to say it. We've had Americans held hostage since October the 7th, and we've lacked a president that had the testicular fortitude to get our people back. This is outrageous that these Americans were taken and murdered, and we've basically stood back and given lip service to both sides, this and that. I want to hear it's wrong. And this is the wages of weakness of a weak president. All the things you just listed, it's because we have a weak America. And now we're going to have a strong America. And I think Donald Trump's going to have far better success. We had world at peace when he was president. We had a peace agreement in the Middle East. But when you take Americans hostage and you murder Americans, you better damn well know the President of the United States is going to do something about it, and we've not known that for 4 years.
Well, I think Netanyahu did a whole lot about it and killed a whole lot of civilians. And so the question is, if you just go in with guns blazing and you still have... Wait a minute. If you go in with guns blazing now and there are hostages still there, do you kill those hostages? Or do you do something more strategic?
Well,
I'm not saying leave them. I'm saying that it seems like it's just no plan. It's just
I guess the thing is we don't really...
A few observations from me with this exchange. Number one, so an American was taken hostage and then ultimately murdered. Did President Biden do anything about that? No, he did not. And we need people to understand, particularly people who clearly are terrorists, to understand that if you hurt American citizens, I mean, you will pay the ultimate consequence. There's no question. And there can't be any wavering or hesitation on that. That is an absolute us as a country dropping the hammer on our adversaries. That's the type of force that the world needs to know exists with America. Now, secondly, this clown towards the end, Solomon Jones, is talking about, well, it just sounds like, we're trying to go in guns blazing. It's as if these people get paid to just argue. Like, they really don't say anything intelligent or anything of substance. So while Trump projects strength, Joe Biden continues to show how weak he really is when he falls asleep during his meeting with the president of Angola. Watch.
With the U.S. in support of the development of the Lobito Corridor. Tanzania views the Lobito Corridor as an integral part of a broader strategy to enhance connectivity in Africa. We also appreciate the fact that the implementation of the project will provide important opportunities for Africa's development in sectors such as agriculture, renewable energy, digital transformation, trade and logistics along the corridor.
There you go. That's your president of the United States, the 46th president of the United States, falling asleep in front of the president of Angola. I guess the president of Angola is really boring and is not really entertaining. So, why not just take a snooze, right? I mean, besides, you still have that war going over with Russia and Ukraine. I mean, you've got Hamas and Israel, you got these other issues stateside, but hey, let's take a quick nap, right? Okay, so this takes us to another crazy story where SCOTUS, the Supreme Court of the United States, had to hear oral arguments about Tennessee banning gender-affirming care, as in issuing puberty blockers and hormone treatments to minors. And the person arguing against this ban is a transgender lawyer who went on CNN and talked about it. Let's hear it.
Strangio, Chase, thanks so much for being here. Really appreciate it. So the case comes at a time when 26 states have passed laws restricting healthcare treatments for transgender youth, according to a CNN analysis of data from the nonprofit think tank Movement Advancement Project. So how do you plan to argue before the U.S. Supreme Court in a case that could have wide-ranging implications beyond the state of Tennessee?
Well, thank you for having me, Jake. And obviously, this is a critical inflection point for transgender people across the country. We're coming off of an election season where transgender people played an outside role in people's consciousness in terms of the way in which we were situated as a threat to others. And when we look at the map of states that ban this type of evidence-based healthcare, we went from 0 states that had these bans in 2020 to now more than half the country. So before the court tomorrow, the question is really a simple one as I see it. This is a law that bans medical treatment only when it is prescribed inconsistent with an individual's sex. Our argument is that treats people differently because of their sex, and therefore the court has to treat it like all other forms of sex discrimination, and that's why it's unconstitutional.
Okay, so let's just understand exactly what is going on here, all right? The court is considering a challenge to a Tennessee law that bans the use of puberty blockers and hormone therapy, okay? Now, you guys got to hear exactly who the lawyer is and how the lawyer sounds, and I'm not going to go any further. I think you guys know exactly how I think about that. Now, it did not appear based on a lengthy oral argument that conservative justices believe that the law constitutes a form of sex discrimination. That would mean courts have to give it close scrutiny. The court's 3 liberal justices all appear to view the law as classifying people by sex. In other words, the 3 liberal justices, when hearing these arguments, were more in support of the argument based on the, premise that by blocking these puberty block or banning these puberty blockers and hormone treatments, that's actually a form of sex discrimination. Now, guys, as I'm saying this, it doesn't even make sense in my mind, but hey, that's what the argument is here. Now, let's actually hear from a couple of these justices exactly what they said, which one of it went viral because it's just utterly ridiculous. Here you go.
Cannot eliminate the risk of detransitioners. So it becomes a pure exercise of weighing benefits versus risk. And the question of how many minors have to have their bodies irreparably harmed for unproven benefits is one that is best left.
I'm sorry, Counselor. Every medical treatment has a risk. Even taking aspirin. There is always going to be a percentage of the population under any medical treatment that's going to suffer a harm. So the question in my mind is not, do policymakers decide whether one person's life is more valuable than the millions of others who get relief from this treatment? The question is, can you stop one sex from the other?
Okay, so the fact that she's comparing puberty blockers to aspirin, I think tells you where her mindset is. That's number one. And secondly, the fact that she's assuming that this type of treatment would be a relief for millions of minors is also utterly ridiculous. What would be a relief is to stop exposing our children to these ridiculous ideas that are damaging to their development, not just physically, but emotionally, spiritually, all of it, right? I mean, the only reason why children are even doing this to themselves is because they see someone else doing it or they hear someone else doing it. You got to understand this. Go back 30 years. This was never a conversation. You know why? Because no one was talking about it. So if you don't hear someone talking about it, you wouldn't know about it. But everywhere you go today, whether it's in the library or it's in the actual education system in these classes, or it's on social media, or they're seeing other children do it to themselves, that's where they're getting the ideas from, or even at home. So if we want to give relief to our children, stop exposing them to this nonsense. Now, the good news is not all justices are buying this stupid argument, by the way. Let's hear this response from Justice Alito.
A question about the state of medical evidence at the present time. In your petition, you made a sweeping statement, which I will quote. Overwhelming evidence establishes that the appropriate gender-affirming treatment with puberty blockers and hormones directly and substantially improves the physical, psychological well-being of transgender adolescents with gender dysphoria. That was in November 2023. Now, even before then, the Swedish National Board of Health and Welfare wrote the following. They currently assess, quote, that the risks of puberty blockers and gender-affirming treatment are likely to outweigh the expected benefits of these treatments, which is directly contrary to the sweeping statement in your petition. After the filing of your petition, of course, we saw the release of the Cass report in the United Kingdom, which found a complete lack of high-quality evidence showing that the benefits of the treatments in question here outweigh the risks.
So Justice Alito is spot on and is exactly what I've always said. There are no studies, and I mean no studies. And when I say no studies, studies that I would actually respect to be credible, that actually show the benefits of doing this to children. There are none. Now, one big conservative voice out there that was actually there physically speaking out in front of this hearing outside was Matt Walsh. Let's take a look at that.
We are all here on this cold day because we recognize three very basic truths. First, that biology is real, it is immutable, it is not subject to the whims of any individual or government or medical organization. Second, that the most essential and fundamental duty of any society is to protect their children. A country that cannot or will not protect its children is a country that deserves to die and will. The third truth is this, that gender ideology, the radical leftist doctrine that claims that girls can be boys and boys can be girls, and that such a impossible transition can be made possible through irreversible drugs and surgery. Gender ideology is deeply sinister.
Okay, so the biggest thing that I heard out of all of that is that it's irreversible. So once you do this to a child, there's no going back. Like once you do cut off the parts, there's no going back, right? Now, let me give you a quick analogy here. So they can't get married until they turn 18, but they can cut off their body parts though. Is that what you want me to believe? I mean, that's just crazy, right? I mean, we lose it when we hear that someone's 21 dating a 17-year-old. We lose it, but we don't lose it when it comes to what we're doing with our children here. I mean, it's fascinating what's going on here. All right, so time for you guys to answer some questions in the comment section below. What do you think it says about Pete Hegseth for coming out and standing up for himself and willing to fight back? Do you believe that's exactly what Americans want in their Secretary of Defense? Also, what do you think about Trump's threat to Hamas? Do you think that actually projects strength and confidence and fortitude, which we've been lacking in the Oval Office for the last 4 years, which you guys seen, where I guess the president fell asleep because he was bored, or maybe there is something wrong with him. I don't know. And what do you guys think about the arguments that the Supreme Court of the United States are hearing today? Do you believe in what I stated, which was that this is not beneficial for children? It does not work. In fact, it's irreversible, and this is dangerous, what we are doing. Let me know what your guys' thoughts are about these stories and more in the comment section below. Now, I want to actually take a moment to thank our supporters of this show. I want to shout you guys out by name that recently signed up for our membership, right? Christina, thank you so much. David, Joseph, Steve, Michael, Gabby. I really appreciate you guys for supporting the channel. Now, we started off this video talking about Pete Hegseth, and of course, last night, the media was in full scale pushing another new hoax, which is that Ron DeSantis could replace Pete Hegseth for Secretary of Defense. We dive all deep into that and the reactions from the other hit piece that they put out on Pete. If you guys want to check out that video and see more of the story, all you have to do is click on that video because it's coming up right now.